But me, your man, Louie T, welcome to my 2020 NFL mock draft, something that I've waited to do, and it's been long awaited. A lot of people have asked me, where was my mock draft? Where's my mock draft? And I've wanted to wait a little bit longer in the process to try to get as many of these picks correct. I've been really off on my mock draft selections over the years when I've been doing this. And so I want to try to get a little bit closer because normally I'm a little bit ways out, about a month or so out, and I'm not one of these mock draft 1.0, 2.0 guys. I put out one mock and that's it. So usually I'm wrong because of that. So I tried to get as close to the draft as possible. I feel really confident in these selections that I made. The one thing that I don't feel confident in, however, is just how this draft is going to take place in terms of, will there be wheeling and dealing as normal, or will teams be a little bit more reserved because of the uniqueness of this draft? And so I think that's still going to make me incorrect when it's all said and done. All it takes is one or two trades to really throw everything out of whack. And I was a little apprehensive in the trade department because I think teams are going to be a little bit more reserved in that regard this year. They're going to kind of take a wait and see approach on things, and even probably more so because of the depth of this draft. I think even more so than the fact that they're in the comfort of their own home and not in the war room and not in the environment where they may be more apt to make a trade. I think because of the depth of this draft, and how you can stand pat and potentially still get a really good football player, I think teams may not be as willing to give up, draft capital later in the draft or even next year when they could just sit tight and allow someone to fall into their lap. And so I'm going to give you explanations for every single selection that I make, why I did it, what was the reasoning behind it. And there are some trades that I think are going to take place that I don't have in my mock draft, and I'll tell you that as well. But with that being said, let's get to the proceedings this evening and get to my handcrafted 2020 NFL draft. The draft is now open for business. The Cincinnati Bengals are on the clock. And obviously, this is a no-brainer. With the number one pick in the draft, the Cincinnati Bengals select quarterback Joe Burrow out of LSU. This is the most slam dunk pick of the draft. I don't think Cincinnati for 1 second entertained anyone's offers to move back in this draft. This is a guy here in Joe Burrow that set college football on fire with his play last year. Kind of came out of nowhere. When you look back at the preseason college football quarterback rankings, Joe Burrow was nowhere to be found on that list. And his performance throughout the course of the college football season, winning the Heisman Trophy, leading his team to an undefeated season, navigating what was one of the most land-filled schedules we've ever seen to an undefeated season in a national championship. Joe Burrow did it all: 60 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 5 rushing touchdowns. He accounted for a whopping 65 touchdowns, completion percentage up over 75%. He did it all in college football. The numbers are cartoonish. The Bengals are starving for a leader at the most important position of quarterback. And so this just makes too much sense for the Cincinnati Bengals. And because of that, Joe Burrow is the number one pick in the draft as we get to the number 2 selection in this draft. And again, it's another team with probably a no-brainer type of pick, but there was a little bit of discussion as to what should be done here amongst fans and some other people around league circles. Maybe the Redskins should trade back, get a bunch of picks here. I don't think the Redskins are going anywhere. Chase Young is the best player in this draft, and if not for Cincinnati being so quarterback hungry, they would have taken Chase Young because he is the best player in this draft. But the Redskins are the ones that benefit from the Bengals needing to go quarterback. They then get the best player in this draft. And you hear so many people talk about how this is the best player they've ever evaluated at that particular position, and how in over 20, 30, 40 years of evaluating prospects, this guy graded out the highest. And so it's not a stretch when you hear someone use the phrase generational talent. Chase Young is that and then some. And I think the Redskins, who need this type of player on the defensive side of the football, get the best player in the 2020 NFL draft. And that's a good get for a Redskins team that is starving for playmakers on the defensive side of the football. They get the best one in this draft in Chase Young. Now the draft is allowed to really start. And I think this is when you're going to start to see some things actually take place as we get to the number 3 pick in this draft. And I don't think the Lions are actually going to be able to get out. And so with their selection, they take cornerback Jeffrey Okudah out of Ohio State. Now, here's the issue with them and getting out of this pick. I talked about how I don't think that you're going to see a draft where teams are going to be wheeling and dealing. I still think that you could easily see someone move up to 3 because although there is so much surrounding Tua Tagovailoa and his injury concerns, I still think there will be a desperate enough team that would be interested in moving up. However, I think this is one of those situations where you just need to sit still. The Lions aren't drafting a quarterback. The Giants aren't drafting a quarterback. The Chargers, their GM, he's just not willing to give up what it's going to take to move up. And I don't think there's anyone else that's going to be willing to move up to take Tua. If it's not, and you got to think, if I'm the Giants, if I'm the Lions, I don't want to move back too far. All right, I still want a blue chip player. I don't want to move back to 16 or I don't want to move back to 13. I'm just throwing out arbitrary numbers here. I don't want to move out of the top 10. So if it's not a team in the top 10 within the first 9 picks or so, I'm not really looking to move back that far. Well, guess what? Nobody else in the top 10 needs a quarterback outside of the team sitting at 5 and 6 in Miami and the Chargers respectively in the top 10. So I think the Lions are looking to move out. They're desperate to move out. But at the end of the day, I think what they ultimately have to do is select cornerback Jeffrey Okudah at a position of need. Yep, they went out and got Desmond Trufant in free agency. That's not enough. They need 2 corners, and Okudah is by far and away the best corner in this draft. And so the Lions get their man here at number 3 with cornerback Jeffrey Okudah. So now we go to the 4th selection in this draft, and for me, it's a tackle. Now, what tackle is it is debatable. I myself am a Mekhi Becton fan. I think he's the best tackle in this draft. However, if you talk to some people, they think that this is a guy that could potentially eat his way out of the league. Like, he may not be able to stay in shape. He may not be able to keep his weight under control throughout the course of his career. And we've seen guys that have eaten their way out of the league, most notably and most recently, Eddie Lacy. So if guys have that penchant to eat and love eating, and they they eat to live, or live to eat, not eat to live, you could see a situation where some teams could be concerned about Mekhi Becton's weight. I think the Giants may be one of those teams. And even more so than that, they may just love the athleticism here with Tristan Wirfs out of Iowa. And that's why he's the selection. They need to protect their investment of Daniel Jones. And they need to get a guy that they feel like can grow with Daniel Jones over the next decade plus. And Tristan Wirfs may be that guy. I'll tell you this much. I'm not the biggest Tristan Wirfs fan. I think the guy is extremely athletic. He's got some talent, but I think he's got a ways to go. And I'm not sure if his ceiling is as high as some of these other guys in this draft. But one thing's for sure, the talent is undeniable, and the Giants need a left tackle. And so here you are, Tristan Wirfs, 4th overall. Could the Giants get out of this pick? Absolutely. Are they listening and want to get out? Sure. But are they going to actually be able to get out is the real question. That is something I'm not certain of, and I think they ultimately have to make a selection, and Tristan Wirfs is the pick. So we get to the number 5 pick in the draft, and this is when things start to get really, really interesting. And I think the Dolphins are about to make a monumental mistake here. They're trying to get cute because of the injury history with Tua, and I think they're overthinking this thing. And I think what they're going to end up doing is outsmarting themselves. And in the long run, they're going to end up looking back and saying, man, did we blow it or what? So I think they're thinking to themselves, Tua's got injury history. And look, I don't blame them for that. Okay, but I'd much rather be wrong on Tua because of injuries than wrong because I decided to go with Justin Herbert instead. And I'm not a Justin Herbert guy, as you can tell. I don't think he is the second best quarterback in this draft. I don't think he's the 3rd best quarterback in this draft, okay? If you've been following me for any amount of time, you know that Justin Herbert is my 4th rated quarterback in this draft. So I feel like the Dolphins are making a colossal mistake here, one that's going to set this franchise back even further on their track to get back to respectability, not just in the AFC East, but in the AFC Conference and NFL as a whole. But They're going to make the decision to go with Herbert over Tua. I think it's going to be a mistake when it's all said and done, but they've done their homework. They've done their due diligence. They feel confident that Justin Herbert's upside is going to prove to be the thing that puts him over the top. And his size and durability are not issues and causes for concern. And so they're just more comfortable going with Justin Herbert. Either way, either Tua gets injured and you lose your job as a GM if you're Chris Greer, or you stake your claim to Justin Herbert and you get fired. Either way, I'd much rather go down in a blaze of glory with Tua Tagovailoa than knowing I effed up by taking Justin Herbert 5th overall. But that's what the Dolphins are going to do. And the team that benefits from this the most, of course, you guessed it, is the Los Angeles Chargers, who stand pat. And Tom Telesco wasn't looking to trade any damn way. That's not in his nature. You look at his track record. He takes the picks as they come to him. He doesn't move up. He doesn't move back. Wherever his 7 selections are in the draft, that's generally what he does. And nothing's changing this year, even though there's a franchise quarterback at stake. He's going to stick to his guns, stick to his way of doing things, and it's going to net him arguably the best quarterback in this entire draft class in Tua Tagovailoa as he ends up a Los Angeles Charger. As they head into their new stadium with their new jerseys, they're going to have a new face of the franchise, and this is a guy that I'm really excited about, and they are as well. They feel like they just knocked it out of the park, and guess what? He doesn't have to play this year. They're going to roll with Tyrod Taylor. So that's going to allow him to be even healthier come 2021 when he finally hits the field. That is if, and if is a big word, Tyrod Taylor can stay healthy throughout the 2020 season. If Tyrod goes down, Tua will be ready to step in, and I think he'll take over the reins for the remainder of his career in Los Angeles with the Chargers. So Chargers get a big one here at number 6 with Tua Tagovailoa as we get to number 7, and another team really looking to move out of this pick in the Carolina Panthers. It would not shock me that we see some movement here. I think you're probably ultimately going to see some movement. I just didn't have the balls to pull it off because I think teams are going to stand pat, but the Panthers definitely won out. And I think there are going to be some teams really interested in the likes of an Isaiah Simmons. And at 7, I think would be a great time to trade up to go and get him. Because if you allow him to get past 7, the Cardinals are definitely taking him at 8. So I think you see a situation here where the Panthers have a chance to get out. And it couldn't have felt any better to them outside of Tua still being on the board. But I think Isaiah Simmons gives them the ability to get out here. And I think that they're ultimately going to have a chance. But I'm going to err on the side of caution and say that they have to stand pat at number 7 because of the climate. And so they're going to make the decision, even though they probably could use Derek Brown a little bit more as their defensive line is depleted, which I never thought I would say that because Carolina, at one point, they were drafting first-round defensive tackles almost every year. But now they're down to just one quality interior defensive lineman. And so they need to replenish the defensive tackle position, but you just can't pass on guys like Isaiah Simmons. You know, he's a unicorn in this draft. 6'3", 240 pounds essentially, at, running a 4.37. You can't pass up these types of guys. And his versatility, the ability to blitz, the ability to drop into coverage, the ability to play a little bit of man, the ability to play single high free safety. You just can't replace these types of players. And so I think the Panthers, albeit a tough decision, ultimately go with Isaiah Simmons at number 7. And so we get to the next selection in this draft, and it belongs to the Arizona Cardinals, who by virtue of what everyone else had to do, essentially ends up with Derek Brown falling into their lap. And they couldn't be more ecstatic about it. I mean, they could go tackle here, sure. But in their minds, they've got guys that they feel good about. And yeah, they may ultimately go tackle a little bit later on in the draft. No, they don't have their second round pick. They gave up that to get Nuke. And so maybe tackle is what they do here. But they didn't expect Derek Brown to be here either. And I think that kind of forces them to make a tough decision one that I think they can live with. They look at their offensive line situation and they feel like we can get by if we don't get another guy that we love. They'll have opportunities in the third round. There will still be guys. This is a deep tackle class. There will still be guys available that can come in and potentially help you in year number one. However, Derrick Brown is one of the best, if not the best, defensive lineman in this draft. And because of that, the Arizona Cardinals can't afford to pass up. Their offense is locked and loaded and ready to go. All right. They got enough weaponry to put up 30 to 40 on any given week. The defense, however, is not where they need it to be. This is the kind of guy that will help them get where they need to be. And in a division where you got teams that love to run the football in San Francisco and Seattle, you've got to be able to beef up your front, stop the run, and attack the quarterback. And I think a guy like Derrick Brown helps them be able to do that. And so the Arizona Cardinals bypass the urge to take a tackle and instead elect to go with Derrick Brown. So we move on to the 9th selection in this draft. And this is where we encounter our first trade of the draft. And so with that being said, here's a situation where you see the Jacksonville Jaguars trade back in the draft and acquire picks, really give themselves a chance to do some damage in this draft. Meanwhile, the Atlanta Falcons, who are thirsty for a big-time defender, comes up into the draft at number 9 to select the second best corner in this draft in CJ Henderson. And I think the impetus here was if they didn't do it, that Denver would come up at number 10 and try to get CJ Henderson. And so to avoid allowing Denver to potentially swoop in and get the guy that they covet, Atlanta beat them to the punch, moved in, got CJ Henderson. And remember, the Falcons were woeful in the secondary a season ago. They were woeful on third downs. They could not get off the field. Lack of pass rush, lack of defenders in the secondary. Now you add Dante Fowler Jr. to your defensive line. Now you add CJ Henderson in the secondary, and it potentially changes things dynamically for this Falcons defense. What was once a proud defense has fallen on hard times. They're looking to get back to what they once were back in 2016 and even early stages of 2017 when this defense looked like they were well on their way before injuries started to take effect. Here's a guy that changes the game for you. His upside may be better than that of Jeff Okudah in this draft. And so Henderson, not the big tackler, but has all of the speed and all of the coverage ability that you're looking for, and then some in this draft. And so the Falcons get their man at number 9 with the first trade of this draft. So we move on to the next selection in this draft, and it's where the tackles start to really come off the board here. And you get to Cleveland at number 10, and Baker Mayfield was running for his life last year. There's no secret. They made a move in the offseason to go get Jack Conklin to man up the right side. They still have a gaping hole at left tackle. There's a question as to whether they're going to trade for Trent Williams to fill that void. If I'm Cleveland, that's what I'm looking to do personally. You know, I don't want to spend the 10th overall pick on a tackle. I'd much rather use that on a big-time player at another position in a very deep draft. And so with the window that I'm looking at with the Browns of a 3 to 4 year window to win, because I look at Odell Beckham, I look at Jarvis Landry, I look at some of these other players that you have, Jack Conklin, all of these guys are right in the prime of their careers right now. And so your window is at least probably open for the next 3 to 4 years to win and win big. Not to say that once those guys are gone, you can't still win, but they're going to give you your best shot. And Trent Williams has 3 or 4 good years left in him. I'd go that route if I were Cleveland and roll the dice and allow myself the ability to maybe go get a big-time receiver here, maybe go get a big-time different defender here, you know, edge rusher to go opposite where you struggled last year. When Myles Garrett got suspended, this defense went to hell in a handbasket. You have a chance to take an edge rusher here. You could do a number of things if you're Cleveland with this pick other than select a tackle. But I don't know if they're going to do anything or not. So the tackle is the safe pick. You need a left tackle. I think the best tackle in this year's draft is still available and on the board for you to select. You need a left tackle, a plug-and-play tackle. Mekhi Becton is that, and I think that's ultimately what is going to happen here with the Cleveland Browns as they make the selection and get their man here in Mekhi Becton to come in and man up the left side of their offensive line. As we get to the next pick in the draft, I talked about this being where the tackles start to really come off the board. And here's another guy that is exceptional in this draft as a tackle. And that's Jedrick Wills out of Alabama. This is a guy here that I think is just a machine. He's technically sound. He's savvy. He's everything you're looking for. The only problem is he's a right tackle. Now, in this league now, you got to have both, left and right. I'm not a fan of drafting a right tackle at 11. However, the thought process here is, look, if you can play right, you can play left. And he protected Tua's blind side, so he's comfortable protecting someone's blind side. So I'm thinking, everyone else is thinking, hey, we can put this guy on the left side. Maybe they don't do it right away. The Jets signed George Fant in free agency. I think that whole thing went through flawlessly without a hitch. But we'll see. Some of these deals are not actually done yet. Guys have not put ink to paper yet. And so some of these deals aren't officially done. However, if Fant comes on board, he's a guy that played left tackle in Seattle. Maybe they want to play him at right tackle. We'll see what happens. But Jedrick Wills, either way, is going to bolster this front. And again, if you want Sam Darnold, to maximize his potential in this league, you got to protect him. You know, the one thing you can't have a young quarterback doing is running for his life. You saw Baker Mayfield on the move last year because he was under constant siege and duress. Sam Darnold is another guy that needs to be protected. He wasn't. Remember that Monday night game against the New England Patriots where he was seeing ghosts and he talked about seeing ghosts? They have to stop that. The way to stop that is to protect your young franchise quarterback. Jedrick Wills will do that for them in the first round at number 11. So we get to the 12th pick in this draft, and this is where the receivers start to come off the board. And the Raiders get to pop the top on the receiver position as the Las Vegas Raiders. I've still got to get used to saying that. Select the number one wide receiver in this draft and CeeDee Lamb out of Oklahoma. This is a guy that fits John Gruden's system to a T. He comes in ready to go right out of the packaging. He's ready to light the league up. And the Raiders desperately need a number one target. Last year, they had a number two posing as a number one in Williams. He can now slide back to number two where he belongs, and everyone else can kind of fit into their proper slots. They drafted a slot receiver last year out of Clemson. He's going to make a great number three option. They got 87 tight ends after adding Jason Witten, not to mention Darren Waller, and a guy that I absolutely love in Foster Moreau going into his second season. They've got plenty of targets, but this is the guy that allows everyone else to play their roles correctly. You have a legit number one wide receiver now in CeeDee Lamb, and I think the Las Vegas Raiders can't be more excited at the way the draft fell, allowing them to select the receiver of their choice here with CeeDee Lamb. So as we continue to move on, I talked about the receiver position being scoured now and how teams are about to go get theirs. And so you're going to see yet another team go and get theirs as the San Francisco 49ers select an Alabama receiver, but probably not the one you were anticipating here. That's right. The San Francisco 49ers bypass Jerry Jeudy and instead elect for Henry Ruggs III. And I said this when I first evaluated him. He's the closest thing I've seen to Tyreek Hill, and that's very scary. I said the one guy in this draft out of all the players, and I don't care what position, irregardless of position, that I didn't want in my division as a player that I have to see 2 times a year for the next 5 years minimum, was Henry Ruggs III. His speed scares me, okay? Speed! You can't teach it. Either you have it or you don't. He's got it in spades. It's pure. It's unadulterated. It's vicious, flavor, delicious. And now he is going to fit into an offense tailor-made for his skill set in San Francisco. And guess what? They're trying to move on from Goodwin. And so this is a guy that's like a carbon copy, but just way better. in Henry Ruggs III. This is a guy that has shown the ability to be durable. He catches everything. His speed is blinding. And Kyle Shanahan loves guys that can run, because when they run the football and they scare you to death with their ability to run the football in that ZBS, all of a sudden you got to get nosy. That safety has to come in the box or you're going to get gashed in the run game. And the minute that you do, they're going to pull that football out and they're going to send one of these receivers deep. And Henry Ruggs is the man for the job if I've ever seen one. That offense is going to be lethal with the addition of Henry Ruggs III. And I can't think of a better place for him to be than in San Francisco with the 49ers. Even their intermediate routes allow for run after the catch because of how well they run the football. You get this guy out in space, catching the football in stride, look out, he could take it to the house. And so I can't think of a better place for him. It's a great addition to the San Francisco 49ers offense. Henry Ruggs III, the selection here at number 13. As we get to the next pick in the draft, and it's another team looking to upgrade their situation at a position of need. Of course, I'm talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as they go tackle at number 14, and Andrew Thomas, the last of the big four in this draft at the tackle position, is snatched off the board. And this is the one that everyone's mocking. This is like one of those picks, and there's like 2 or 3 of these every year outside of, 1 and 2. That everyone kind of has a consensus on, and usually they're right. And I'm not going to buck a trend. I'm not going to try to go outside the box here. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers desperately need to upgrade left tackle, okay? Their left tackle position has been skittish at best with Brown. He's been hit or miss. And look, I think he could be a solid right tackle, but at this point, I don't think he's cut out for left tackle in this league. And thus, a guy like Andrew Thomas makes a ton of sense. I can tell you this much. Tom Brady was never mobile. Not when he was 21 years old. He's damn sure not mobile now that he's 41 years old. So I'm going to tell you this as plain and simple as I can. If you want him to succeed, you better be able to protect Tom Brady, because as we've seen in the past, when Tom Brady's under duress, Tom Brady's not Tom Brady. It's almost like the Snickers commercial, okay? You're not hungry. You're not yourself when you're hungry. Tom Brady is not himself when he's under duress, okay? So you got to protect Tom Brady. You invested all that money in him. You went and traded for Gronk. You've done all of this to revamp your team to give you a chance to win in this small window. Andrew Thomas has to be the pick here for the Buccaneers. It just makes too much sense. And I think the Buccaneers are going to do exactly that, making him their selection at number 14 as we mosey right along in the first round of this draft. And it's a team that I felt like wanted to move up to get a defender, but they ended up having to stand pat at 16 or 15, excuse me. And that's the Denver Broncos. And they're another team starving for another a compliment to their guy. I think Cortland Sutton has proven that he has the goods to be a number 1 in this league. But you know what's better than 1 number 1? 2 number 1s. That's right. You guessed it. And you get 1A and 1B. The thing they're lacking in Denver right now is a receiver with home run threat ability. A receiver that can take the top off the defense. Cortland Sutton's cool, but guess what? Generally, that defender's in his hip pocket. So he's got to go make the acrobatic catch. He's got to go climb the ladder and put his nutsack on somebody's helmet. Now they have a guy, and you've got one of the best deep ball throwers in the entire National Football League in Drew Lock, a guy that I absolutely love. All right, throwing the football. There isn't a better guy that the Broncos can select outside of Henry Ruggs to go and get the football. And to me, Jerry Jeudy's a more complete receiver than that of Henry Ruggs at this point. Ruggs may develop like Tyreek Hill did in Kansas City, but right now, Jerry Jeudy comes in ready to run routes, ready to do everything, short, intermediate, and deep. He's got the speed to take the top off the defense. Anytime he touches it, it could be a house call. And so the Broncos are starving for this kind of player. And when you are looking to give your young quarterback the best chance to succeed, the first thing you can do is protect him up front. The second thing you need to do is get him the weaponry necessary for him to succeed. I think they've got some issues up front, especially at left tackle with Garrett Bowles, but that's maybe something they can explore down the road, second, third round. Here, there aren't a bunch of Jerry Judys. There are a lot of talented receivers, no doubt about it, but there aren't many Jerry Judys in this draft. You got arguably the best receiver in this draft. I think CeeDee Lamb is, but Jerry Jeudy's not far behind. And so you get a steal here if you're the Denver Broncos at 15 with wide receiver Jerry Jeudy at number 16, or excuse me, 15. And so you take them and you don't look back. All right. And so wrapping up the first 16 picks in this draft, are the Jacksonville Jaguars, who traded back with the Atlanta Falcons. If you recall, Falcons moved up to take cornerback C.J. Henderson, and now the Jaguars moved into the perfect position, and they wouldn't have moved any further back than 16. Why, you ask? Because the Dallas Cowboys were set and poised to take K'Lavon Chaisson out of LSU. That was the guy that they targeted. That was the guy they were zooming in on. And the Jaguars swooped right in front of them, got the guy that they were thinking about taking at 9, picked up a bunch of picks, and still got the guy that they were thinking about taking at number 9 in K'Lavon Chaisson. Look, they've got a disgruntled edge rusher in Yannick Ngakoue. There's no secret. He's probably played his last snap in a Jacksonville Jaguars uniform. And look, that defense systematically has been taken apart over the last 2 years. You know, they're not the same defense that they were when they made that championship run and that run to the AFC Championship game in 2017. They're not the same defense, all right? Piece by piece, brick by brick, it's been, kind of taken apart. Now they're slowly trying to rebuild it. The best way for this Jacksonville Jaguars team to get back to where they want to be is through defensive talent. They've been stockpiling it, and even though they've lost pieces, they've added pieces. They added Allen last year. They've got some young guys that they need to see start to make that leap, like Taven Bryant that they drafted a couple of years ago. They've still got young, talented football players. And the Williams kid they took in the draft last year, the brother of Quinnen Williams, I think has a potential to be really special in Quincy Williams. Now you add another defender to give you a guy to replace what you're going to ultimately lose as an edge rusher in Yannick Ngakoue here in K'Lavon Chaisson. And I think it's a perfect fit for him. Now you got 2 edge rushers and Josh Allen and K'Lavon Chaisson coming off the edges, Taven Bryan and company inside, some athletically gifted backers, and Miles Jack and Quincy Williams and all these guys. This is a fast-flowing, aggressive Jaguars defense that needs to get to the quarterback because the secondary isn't what it once was. All right, it's not what it used to be. And so this is an example of the Jaguars saying, we value edge rusher over corner. We'll draft a corner at some point in this draft, and we just picked up a bunch of picks, and so we'll have ample opportunity. All right, we got another pick later in the first round. We got ample opportunities to get a corner in this draft, but you don't have ample opportunities to get pass rushers, arguably the second best pass rusher in this draft, in K'Lavon Chaisson. And so that's what the Jaguars do here, and ultimately it turns out to be a great move for them, moving back, picking up picks, and still getting the guy that they coveted all along. So we stop here and take a break. This is part 1 of my mock draft. We will then give you picks 17 through 32 as I wrap up my handcrafted 2020 NFL mock draft. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content, and also follow me on IG. Louie T Network _ is the IG account. And remember, if it's not your man T, it's not the best NFL coverage. It could be. Make sure you stay tuned for part 2 of my 2020 NFL mock draft. I'll see you then. Take care. Louie T Network.